For as long as Assassin's Creed has been around, fans have been asking, when does this franchise come to feudal Japan? And now with Assassin's Creed Shadows, the time has finally come, but how does it compare to Ghost of Tsushima when it comes to attention to detail? So hello guys, and welcome to my direct comparison of the brand new Assassin's Creed Shadows versus Ghost of Tsushima, two fantastic open world action games set in feudal Japan, and I can't wait to compare them. But first, a quick shout out and thank you to Ubisoft for sending me an early access copy of Assassin's Creed Shadows. It helped get this video out before launch, so a huge shout out and thank you to them. But guys, let's dive into the video. So beginning with a comparison of the two games' worlds, and holy shinobi, these games are gorgeous. And while both games' landscapes are dazzling eye candy, one thing I did notice is that in Ghost of Tsushima, the landscape seems a bit more spread out, and what I mean by that is that the mountains seem like they're a bit further apart than what we see in Assassin's Creed Shadows, which gives the environment in this game a bit more of a heightened sense of verticality. And it's not uncommon in Assassin's Creed Shadows to look into the vista and see sprawling mountain ranges going out as far as the eye can see. But when it comes to the open world, one of the most impressive aspects of Assassin's Creed Shadows is that time doesn't stand still. And I don't just mean a day-night cycle going from day to night, but as time passes, so do the seasons. Snow-covered winters will turn to spring, and then summer, and eventually fall, and with each season comes new gameplay opportunities. Hiding in the lush greenery in summer is a lot easier when there's actually leaves on the bushes, whereas in winter, not so much, and it's just cool that these seasons change not just visually, but actually add new gameplay opportunities. It's one of those mechanics that really push the envelope forward on what's possible in open world games, and you immediately want to see it in other open world games. Moving on now to a comparison of the characters you'll be playing as between the two games, and in Ghost of Tsushima you play as Jin Sakai, a noble samurai who's being pushed down the shadowy path of the shinobi. And while the game does let you choose your playstyle, either facing the enemy head-on as a samurai or sneaking around the shadows as a shinobi, narratively it is kind of weird switching back and forth between the two playstyles because of how much they contradict each other. While in Assassin's Creed Shadows, narratively they kind of fix this by splitting the gameplay up into two separate characters.
I make my own choices.
Yasuke can play as the noble samurai facing enemies head-on, while Naoe can sneak around the shadows stabbing people in the back. Instead of having both of these gameplay styles forced onto one character like they did in Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima is also a very grounded, more realistic game than most Assassin's Creed games. But I'm happy to say Assassin's Creed Shadows is also more grounded than previous entries in the franchise. Gone are the supernatural abilities seen in previous games, and replacing them are techniques and abilities that are much more grounded and realistic. And while not quite supernatural, it is kind of funny seeing Yasuke, who's like 3 feet taller than everybody in this entire game, just boot these little people through the air. I giggle a little bit every time. Which leads us to a comparison of the game's combat. In Assassin's Creed Shadows, combat is mostly chaining together dodges, parries, and combos to break down enemies' armor, which is kind of cool because when the armor breaks, you actually see the armor pieces break off the enemies, and only then can you actually take down the enemy's health. While in Ghost of Tsushima, combat is focused around using the correct stance, which we'll cover later, and chaining together combos, parries, and dodges to break down your enemy's guard in order to break their pose. And only then can you deliver a fatal strike. But when it comes to the combat between these two games, it's a lot more than just combos and parries, because whenever it comes to something like weapon variety, it gets a little tricky, because Assassin's Creed Shadows has so many different kinds of weapons, from katanas to knives to those ball and chain sickle things. There's a lot more weapons in Assassin's Creed Shadows than there are in Ghost of Tsushima, and they're a ton of fun to use, and they all play differently. While in Ghost of Tsushima, there may be less weapon variety, but this is replaced by katana stances, meaning you may be using the same katana throughout the entire game, but the stance that you're using while using the katana is changing constantly depending on the enemy that you're fighting. Meaning rapidly switching your stance to match the enemy you're in combat with gives the katana 4 distinct playstyles as opposed to giving you multiple weapons. In the end, giving you more mileage out of fewer weapons. But when it comes to how it actually feels to have your weapon make contact with the enemy, both games feel fantastic, as the final hit that actually takes out the enemy always has a cool little flourish that finishes them off, and they all look great. Though I do gotta say, in Assassin's Creed Shadows, it kind of surprised me to see they had full-on dismemberment, which kind of blew me away. But one thing I absolutely adored about Ghost of Tsushima is that as a samurai, you could do these really cool standoffs where the first person who flinches would be taken out with a single slow-motion sword swipe. It looks awesome. And though in Assassin's Creed Shadows, though we don't have anything exactly like this, there are some really cool special abilities that you can use that take away all the color from the image, except for the red blood spraying through the air. And I'm not gonna lie, it looks sweet. And moving on now to a comparison of the game's stealth systems, and both games do have pretty robust stealth mechanics that allow you to sneak through the tall grass, stabbing people in the back, and even jump off roofs, assassinating people. Both games also allow you to swim underwater to sneak up on enemies, though Assassin's Creed Shadows does have this neat mechanic where if you lay still, you can actually breathe through a reed, which is pretty cool. But when it comes to stealth, there are a couple things that Assassin's Creed Shadows did that really surprised me. Like the ability to go prone whenever you want is something we've never seen in the franchise. Not to mention, you can actually go around taking out lights in the environment in order to hide in the shadows, which is really cool. Another cool little detail I noticed is that in Assassin's Creed Shadows, as time passes, the AI will actually react depending on the time of day, meaning as I sneaked through this fort, I actually noticed that some of the guards were actually falling asleep on duty, which made sneaking around a bit easier, which was pretty cool. While for the most part in Ghost of Tsushima, whenever you're sneaking through enemy encampments, it doesn't really matter what time of day it is, the AI will always be kind of doing the same things. Which leads us to a comparison of the parkour systems between the two games, and let's be honest, Ghost of Tsushima, its parkour is serviceable. It's not there to be like free running in Assassin's Creed. I mean, it works for what the game is trying to do, but in Assassin's Creed, I mean, come on, did you see that dismount? That was slick as hell. Assassin's Creed Shadows parkour, whether you're climbing up a building or sliding down a building, is just so visually appealing. It's filled with so many flips and turns, and it honestly has been honed over almost 20 years of making games, and it's never looked better. I'm also happy to report that both games have a pretty non-hand-holding grappling hook mechanic, which you're supposed to use to traverse gaps in the environment, but you can also use to do stupid stuff like just swing around. And the fact that I can do this in feudal Japan in 2 games is something that I'm just really happy about. And moving on now to a comparison of the game's water effects, and you could argue in Assassin's Creed Shadows that the water looks more realistic than what we see in Ghost, though when it comes to actually interacting with the water, it kind of looks underwhelming. There's not a whole lot of ripple effects. It doesn't look all too realistic. But even in Ghost of Tsushima, the water looks more like a painting, and though it may have more realistic looking ripple effects, they still don't look nearly as good as something as like we'd see in Skyrim in 2011. But I will say in Assassin's Creed Shadows, whenever you dive into the water, the camera actually goes beneath the surface of the water with you, which is kind of cool. While in Ghost of Tsushima, the camera stays above the surface of the water, but I mean, you could take it or leave it, it doesn't really matter. And the final thing I wanted to highlight in this video is that throughout both games, there's just so many little things dotting the landscape that really highlight the culture of both of these games being set in Japan, from little shrines that you can pray to throughout both games that can give you buffs, which is really cool. Even really small details like Naoe taking off her shoes when she enters someone's home in Assassin's Creed Shadows. It's small details like this that show that they really care about the culture that these games are set in, and it really shows in the games. Well guys, you made it to the end. Thank you for watching my direct comparison of Assassin's Creed Shadows versus Ghost of Tsushima, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching this direct comparison as much as I've enjoyed making it for you guys. And as I usually say with these videos, I'm not trying to say that one of these games is better than the other or one is bad or anything like that. I personally enjoy both of these games, and I hope you guys do as well. And I just love comparing games, especially when they share unique settings like these two games share. But either way guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and once again, a huge shout out and thank you to Ubisoft for sending me an early access copy of Assassin's Creed Shadows. It made this video possible. But guys, that's all I have for this video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya!